I know other platforms are pushing live, and we'll get started here in about 30 seconds or so, maybe even less. Zach, what's the weather like over in Sacramento right now?
Caught me mid drink. Well, I'm pretty sure today's gonna be hot. It's like warm out right now. I've been outside a bunch of times with my dog, but yesterday was like a high of 95. I
Ooh,
think
wow,
that's what today's supposed to look like, 92. What's
nice.
interesting though, or what's weird is that over the weekend it was like high of 70. So like we had this like really massive heat wave, and then it was like really kind of like nice and but windy and breezy and almost cold, and then now suddenly back to heat. And I think it's supposed to go away again like end of the week, not end of the week, but like by weekend, and we'll just keep doing the cycle. But eventually it'll just be hot all the time.
Got it. Cool, cool. All right, man. Well, I know we've got a lot to cover. We like to keep these conversations in bite-sized chunks because everybody here is real busy. So why don't we get started? How's that sound?
Let's do it.
Beautiful. All right. So the real reason why we want to make sure we talk to you today is because over the last month we've seen an increasing trend of entrepreneurs who have come to us saying things like prospects have been ghosting them, or the response rates were falling on their cold outbound campaigns, on their warm campaigns, etc. Or they had calls, appointments that were set, and then all of a sudden people are just no showing, leads dropping, or deals just not closing. And the list just kind of goes on and on and on. And if any of that tends to resonate with you, just drop us a comment so that we know that there's you're not alone, and we know that it happens. So we want to talk to you about why that's going on, what you can do about it, and so forth. And that's the topic of today's conversation. Anything you want to add to that, Zach?
No, not yet, not yet.
So this concept, by the way, and everything that people are feeling right now, for some people, it's a big surprise. They don't know what to do, and they're starting to panic, and the heart rate goes up, and the blood pressure goes up, and whatnot, because they're like, "Oh my gosh, what's happening?" But just as a reminder from some of our past videos, there's really no such thing as a good economy or a bad economy, and it's only just a different economy. And if you think about the way that things move, they move in one direction. And when they start to move in another direction, there's a quick pause right before the direction changes in another way. If you look at the way a pendulum swings, it goes up, there's a quick pause, and then it swings the other way. It goes up, quick pause, and it swings another way. So we've gone through recessions now in my lifetime, quite a few of them. This is me aging myself, right? Quite a few recessions. So this is a moment that we've been waiting for, and sometimes there's a couple different pauses, but we knew that this was going to happen. That pause, it's what we call the deer in headlights syndrome. It's when all of a sudden entrepreneurs, or decision makers for that matter, they notice that things are changing, and so they stop for a moment to assess everything that's going on. They pause, and then regardless of the direction that the market takes, they get back into taking action. And there's a rather high probability that we're going to see an oncoming recession. I don't say that by a gut feel. I say that through the essence of, looking at the data. According to the National Federation of Independent Businesses, we're at a 48-year low for optimism. The lowest amount of optimism in the recorded history, according to the National Federation of Independent Businesses. And so that means that business owners by itself have a very pessimistic view of the future. And when they're very pessimistic, they start to be more discerning, and they're more careful with the amount of money that they're spending. It doesn't mean that they stop spending. It just means that they're really careful with the money that they're spending. And so when you see that deer in headlight syndrome, when things are stopping and there's that pause, this is a huge, huge, huge opportunity for you. It's a massive opportunity because while everybody's pushing the same message over and over and over again, it's your turn to push a different message and understand why are they paused? What are the type of things that they're looking for? And they're looking for answers. There's a lot of uncertainty. What's going to happen? Should I be making this decision? In some cases, and you're seeing this more and more, there's ROI justification. HubSpot actually does a really good job in doing some ROI justification. They talk about how, you know, if you were to use one platform, it would cost you this much, but if you were going to use their platform, it costs this much, and they give some ROI justification. But right now, this uncertainty, this pause, this uncertainty is causing an immense amount of overwhelm with buyers. And so they're just assessing their current situation. They want to see, how do I make smart decisions? Now it's your job to give them all the information and education necessary to show them why they're making a smart decision for why they should buy the product and service that you have in general, as well as information as to what makes you different. And I can go on, but Zach, do you have any questions, or did you want to add to anything I just said?
No, keep going. You were going there. So
special thanks to all my caffeine over here. I'm just on a rant.
No, I think it's good. Keep going.
Yeah. So if we think about it from, again, all those different questions, understand one thing is that in good times we have easy access to capital. Our decision-making process is super fast. In a down economy, it's a little bit different. The decision-making process takes longer. And now we have additional people involved in the decision-making process. In a B2B situation, you're now selling not just the decision makers. If you're selling to, say, other marketing departments, you're not just selling to other marketing departments. You now have to justify that to the CFO. Anytime you take a decision over the CFO, it's an ROI-based discussion. So what information are you giving to the decision maker that you're speaking with right now that allows them to go back to the CFO and justify it from an ROI perspective? In a B2C type of environment, you still have an ROI type of perspective. Sometimes it's just going to go with the person you're talking with. Other times they're going to justify it to their spouse or significant other. Like, why does it make sense for us to spend this money? Because what commonly happens in a recessionary type of environment is they start to pull back. They lay off, they cut expenses, and they go into this holding pattern where they just kind of get in the corner and they wait and they desperately hope that things are going to turn around. So what we're trying to do is tell them why now is the best time for them to spend money in this product and service, and why it makes more economic sense for them to do business with you. Justifying the ROI of not only the investment that they're making in the category itself, but how you're going to justify your price. Because you don't want to be in a situation where you have to discount. Instead, you want to be in a situation where you can still be the most expensive competitor and still have people lining up to do business with you. And you can do that when you demonstrate a stronger ROI.
So let me ask you something. For those who are listening, there might be some thoughts like, okay, so how do I go about doing this? What are some potential tips or ideas to better educate my prospect, or to make that decision so clear, that ROI will, things are tight, but if we don't do this, it could be worse, right? It's like kind of like balancing out, like, if I don't do anything, this happens, but if I, or if, we stand pat, then this, whatever, but the downside of that is we could be way worse. Right. And so I think that's what we often think about when we're talking about our coaching and consulting services. So if someone in the audience is asking you that, what do you think that would be? Like, what are some ideas that come to mind?
That's a great question, Zach. I just had this conversation with the CEO of a PR agency, and he said, look, I just had a client that ended up canceling that contract. I said, why? He said, well, CFO said that they needed to cut back expenses, and unfortunately, they saw PR as a nice to have instead of a must have. So he said, what was your response? And he said, well, I mean, what am I going to do? They had to cut expenses and they cut it. Frankly, I think they made a bad decision. We need PR today, but what am I going to do? So we have to reframe it. If I was in his situation, I would have stopped and said, I understand the need to cut expenses, but I feel like I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't explain to you why cutting PR, particularly with us, would be one of the worst decisions that you can make right now. And for them to say, wait a minute, I don't understand why. And then we could go into, in this case, say, well, here's what we know, that the difference between 2019's consumer and today's consumer is a lot different. We have a more discerning consumer. That means that your buyers have become researchers. That means that they're going to go online and they're going to look up information about you. But let me ask you a question. Are they going to believe you more than they're going to believe a third party source? And I say, well, they'll probably believe the third party source, right? And where are you going to get those third party sources if you're not investing in PR? Well, I guess we won't have them. You see, this appeals to more of the discerning consumer, making why PR could be the best investment that you can make right now. And cutting back PR is only making it easier for your competitors to capture more market share. Are you, willing to accept that risk? Not really. So I could help you by talking about some other ways in which you could cut additional expenses. And so, then they take the hat off and become more of that advisor and consultant.
Yeah.
Well, we're making a compelling reason for PR, but it could be anything. It doesn't matter for that moment.
Yeah, I think one thing to mention that I've always found to be true is, let's say in that particular situation, it sounded like this person was paying for PR. There was a higher up that decided that, perhaps we needed to make this adjustment. If
Yep.
you can get that person that you're speaking to be your champion and almost tie their success in the company to your success,
That's great tech.
then
Yes.
they are going to be, well, no, I need this because I want to keep my job. Everyone, in a recession, it's almost as though this is a bad analogy, but I think there's the initial accident, and then people are just kind of looking around like, what just happened, and then everyone starts thinking about themselves, right? Like, well, what can I do for self-preservation, to ensure I have a job and I can pay my bills and I can feed my children, etc. And so if you can pitch your services in a sense that I'm going to enable you to be successful, I'm going to empower you to keep your job, to keep making money, to level up, etc., then you're more likely to get them to be like, you know what, I do need this. I need this service. I'm going to go to bat for this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's when you're fortunate enough to be able to get them on the phone, which is, the ideal situation. But let's actually take it one step back and say, well, what's going to happen when you can't get them on the phone? So one of the things that we're doing, and I actually spent quite a significant amount of time this morning redesigning the paid media concept and how that has to change with today's buyer as opposed to yesterday's buyer. See, yesterday's buyer, we were able to do things like direct response marketing was really great because you put an ad out there and you could track it because the buying decisions and the buying cycle was much shorter. In today's consumer, it's different. Again, not only have buyers become researchers, but they have a lot more consideration to think about. So we have to understand the buyer's journey. They're not going to buy on your timeline. If it was up to Zach, he would love to make one call closes day in and day out. That would be, say Zach's timeline, but the reality is a consumer has got a much longer timeline. So we got to support that timeline. So there's all different ways we could do that, but on a paid media perspective, it all comes down to retargeting. Many people, when they think of paid media, they think about it in terms of, okay, we have our intent-based keywords. So if you're looking for, say, a business coach, we're going to put business coaching right there, and that's the intent-based keywords. And then for anybody that visited the page, we got retargeting, and we got retargeting there. And somewhere in the middle, we've got long tail keywords that hope to drive conversions. And everything is all conversion based conversations. That doesn't support today's buyer who's a researcher. If you look at paid media like a funnel, what we need to do is look at it in terms of, the first thing we need to do is just get them to click the website. Just click. That's all we're doing. And then what we need to do? We need to get them to come back to the website multiple times, because the more that they come back, it's a consumption that drives conversion. So how can we get them to come back to the website? And so that takes them further down. And then some of the intent that we look for is not, hey, give me your email address, give me your email address, and so forth. Some of that intent is, what pages are they going to the website? Are they going to the services page? Are they going to the testimonials page? Are they going to the about page? Because if they're doing that, now they're further along the buying process. Now they're really entering more of that consideration phase. And then once they go from there, now you can offer more aggressive lead magnets and get them to, take an assessment or download a white paper, all this other stuff. Now, of course, you can sprinkle that in other areas to see, those people are ready to make fast decisions. But it's really about, take people first to visit the website, take it slow. Then, we'll see how many people are visiting the services pages and so forth. And then, let's get them to submit email addresses for an assessment. Now let's get them on a call. Now let's really show them the testimonials, the endorsements, the case studies, and so forth to support that buying. And so it's a different type of concept as opposed to yesterday's buyer, which is buy now, buy now, buy now. Here's a countdown clock. You got 12 hours to buy right now. Like, that is going to be less effective in today's environment than it was in yesterday's environment. So we need to learn how to evolve and adapt.
A good example of that is like the VC world right now. Like if you zoom back maybe a couple of years, the money was just flying left and right.
Yep.
Like even if you didn't want it, people are lining up just to throw money at you because of the interest rates, access to capital, etc. But now it's changed already, and that's one of those markets that's already changed, and it's become much more difficult. Access to capital is not as readily available, and so basically what that means though is that you just have to be better to get that right. It's not like it's not out there. It's not that it just no longer exists. It's just completely gone. It's more competitive. You have to actually work for it. It's a little bit harder. And so therefore I think of it like that with both in sales, whatever industry you're in, is that somebody will be successful. What can you do to be successful? What can you do to be that person in your space that continues to not only survive, but thrive in a potential down market or recession?
It's funny, Zach and I had this conversation earlier when we were talking about, building a business in a bull market and building a business in a recessionary environment. And hands down, anytime you were to ask me this question, my choice would be building the business in a recessionary type of environment. Because in good environments, people just don't think strategically. They just kind of throw a whole bunch of crap up in the air and, people start to buy, and, making money is actually easy. But in a down environment, the strategic entrepreneurs are the ones that thrive. So the cream really does rise to the top. So building a business in a recessionary environment makes it much more efficient for you to capture more market share. And it's a lot easier because there's a lot less noise. I see Bill agrees, right? And actually, great, Bill Kenny, he's a CEO of a company called Focus Lab. They're the ones responsible actually for our branding. A huge fan. A company like Focus Lab, wonderful company because they have not only an extraordinary experience, that extraordinary experience creates raving fans, and the result of the work that they do is an easy ROI justification. Because something as simple as a good quality brand turns around and creates some additional opportunity and revenue. So I just wanted to give a quick hat tip over to you, Bill, because you run an extraordinary company, and I'm definitely a big fan of yours. So sidetracked. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, I think you're thinking along those lines as an excellent brand. It's that lasting impression that you can create, and it's just being more strategic. Whether you're a branding agency, an asphalt company, I don't know, anything in between, right? It's just being more strategic and having that strategic advantage over your competitors, because there's certainly going to still be opportunity.
Yeah.
But if you don't change, we saw that at the beginning of the pandemic as well, right? In 2020,
Yeah.
things changed, couldn't travel. I mean, we've been beating this like point,
Sure.
and we don't probably have to relitigate this, but things changed. Can't travel, can't go see people. Trade shows are canceled. Oh my gosh. For those who adapted and changed, they were able to succeed, whereas others maybe
Yeah.
not, because not necessarily all people who didn't succeed. I know there were a lot of things out of our control within that, but those who could change and didn't refuse not to, well, that's part of the reason why you found yourself in that position.
I mean, at one point we surveyed our clients in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic when everything was shut down, and 86% had their best year ever because they adapted quickly and they were able to find opportunity even in the middle of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
But if we want to look at something real quick, just to talk about just the branding agency, because you use that example, right? Part of the differentiating factors, if we just look at a branding agency, right, how we're going to establish that ROI is that a lot of branding agencies will build a brand based on what they believe is creative and interesting and whatnot. And versus, you look at a company like Focus Lab or some other branding agencies, right? And they have a different perspective. And they look at what's going to drive conversions and so forth. And so you have a much better ROI discussion when you talk about the things that are most important to them as to, here's your competitors, here's what makes you different, and here's our process to make sure that you create a strategic foothold moving forward versus somebody else. When you were to interview a lot of other branding agencies and you say, what's your process? It's all going to be about, oh, wow, this is creative and we won awards here and we did this and that. But what did that mean to your clients? The clients that went through the branding, what did that mean to them? Did they capture more market share? Did they earn more business? Did they close more deals? What did that actually mean? And when you can quantify that, then you can have a nice ROI discussion to branding it to the CFOs. Does that make sense?
It does. I like it.
Cool. All right, Zach, anything else? I know we like to keep things short and sweet. I went on a little bit of a segue, but
I will finish with this is our pitch, right? We do coaching sessions all day long, right? We do these strategy sessions, 5 to 6 a day. Typically start with a 20-minute call. We'll tell you a little bit about what we do, ask a few questions of you, and then we can jump into a deeper dive, which is the 45-minute session. And I think in those conversations, what we're seeing now is discussing this very thing, right? And discussing, what could be your potential competitive advantage and angle, and how can you succeed should things change or continue to change. And so if you're feeling lost or just unsure of where to start, or there's any myriad of challenges that face business owners today, hit us up, have that 20-minute conversation, then we'll jump to a 45, and I think it'd be valuable. So if you're interested, just reach out and we can find a coach to talk with you and go from there.
Awesome. And you could do that over at predictableprofits.com. We also have a free business assessment up there if you want to see how your business stacks up against all the other businesses out there. I'd encourage you to take that as well. But we're here to be able to help support you and help you navigate through this changing environment so that you can go on and have wild success. So whatever we can do to help you there, let us know. If there's other comments and questions and topics and whatnot that you'd like addressed, please be sure to throw this in the comment box, and we'll make sure that we're able to create another segment that helps to address those questions. Awesome, guys. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here. We'll see you next week.